The first time I heard them speak their twin language, I thought it was charming. By the time I realized it was a language I would never be fluent in, I was already fluent in the vocabulary of doubt. My name is Olivia. I met my fiancé a year ago at a friend's barbecue. He was the kind of guy who lit up a room, easy to talk to, with a smile that felt genuine. We clicked fast. He talked a lot about his family, how close they were, which I liked. I come from a smaller, quieter family, so the idea of a big, warm one was appealing. He mentioned his twin sister early on, saying they were best friends. I thought that was sweet. I didn't have any siblings, so I figured that's just how it was for twins. How wrong I was. The first real glimpse happened at a family dinner about 3 months into dating. His parents had a nice house, and everyone was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. It felt overwhelming but welcoming. That is, until after dessert. My fiancé and his sister, who had been chatting quietly at the other end of the table, suddenly got everyone's attention. They were going to tell the story of the Great Hamster Escape, a legendary event from when they were 8. The family all settled in, grinning, like they knew what was coming. And then they started. They didn't tell the story like normal people. One would say a few words, then the other would jump in. They'd correct each other on tiny details only they remembered. They'd set up a joke and the other would deliver the punchline. They had this rhythm, this back and forth that was like watching a tennis match where I didn't know the rules of the game. The whole table was roaring with laughter at parts that just seemed confusing to me. I laughed too, because what else do you do? But inside, I felt a strange loneliness. I was sitting right there, but I was completely outside of it. It was their world, and I was just visiting. Afterward, driving home, my fiancé was still buzzing. He asked me if I had fun. I said I did, but mentioned carefully that their story was hard to follow for an outsider. He just reached over and squeezed my hand. "Oh, you'll learn our language, Brian," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "It just takes time. You'll get there." I remember feeling warm then, thinking he was inviting me in. Now I know he was just telling me to learn how to be a good audience. A few months later, it was his birthday. We went to his parents' house for a special dinner. His sister was there, of course. The meal was lovely. His mom had made all his favorite foods. After we ate, I offered to help clear the plates. His mom and I were in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, when I heard the pipes groan and water start rushing through the walls. A bath was being run upstairs. Then, clear as day, I heard his laughter, followed immediately by hers, trickling down the staircase. It was a private, shared sound. I must have frozen, a plate in my hand, because his mother looked at me. She smiled, a soft, understanding smile, and put a hand on my arm. "Don't worry, dear," she said. "It's their birthday bath. They've done it every year since they turned 5. It's their special time. One day, you'll have traditions of your own with him." She said it so casually, like she was explaining why grass is green. But that casualness made my stomach tighten. It wasn't the act itself. Siblings could have silly traditions. It was the way it was presented as this untouchable, sacred thing that I should just accept and not question. The fact that a grown man and his grown sister took a bath together on their birthday was just a normal family fact. I nodded and finished loading the dishwasher, the sound of their splashing and laughing feeling louder than the clattering plates. The next morning, I decided to be proactive. I wanted to understand, to show I was trying to be part of the family. I found his sister alone in the sunroom, drinking coffee. I sat down and gave her my friendliest smile. "So," I said, "that birthday bath tradition sounds like it has some funny stories behind it. What's the most memorable one?" I expected her to laugh and tell me about bubblebeards or something silly from childhood. But her smile, which had been relaxed, stiffened. It became smaller, tighter. She looked at me over the rim of her mug. "It's not really something you explain, Brian," she said, her voice light but final. "It's something you feel. You had to be there." Then she took a sip of her coffee and looked out the window, ending the conversation. The dismissal was polite, but it was a dismissal all the same. I felt like a dog that had been told to go lie down. I wasn't part of the you who had been there. I probably never would be. A turning point came a few weeks after that. I was staying over at the family home for the weekend. In the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty. The room was dark. My fiancé was asleep beside me, breathing softly. I slid out of bed to go get a glass of water from the hall bathroom. As I passed the dresser, I saw his phone light up on the nightstand. A text notification glowed. At the exact same second, from down the hall in the room where his sister was sleeping, I heard an identical notification chime. A double ding. It was eerie, like they were connected to the same signal. I couldn't help it. I looked at his phone screen. The preview showed a text from her. It read, "Can't sleep either? Remember the storm." And then it cut off. I stood there in the dark, frozen. A moment later, I saw his screen light up again as he, half asleep, fumbled for the phone. He typed back a response, a soft smile on his face in the blue glow, before putting it down and settling back into his pillow. I went and got my water, but the chill I felt had nothing to do with the cold from the tap. I got back into bed and lay there, staring at the ceiling. I told myself it was sweet. They were close. They shared childhood memories. But the word storm stuck in my head like a thorn. What memory was so powerful, so intimate, that it connected them in the silent, secret hours of the night when I, the person he was going to marry, was asleep right next to him? It wasn't about jealousy of their past. It was about the present. It was about why that connection felt the need to activate at 2 a.m, in separate rooms with me in between. The seed of doubt, small and dark, was firmly planted now. I began to notice more things. The way they sometimes dressed similarly without planning to. The way she would hand him something he needed before he even asked for it. The private jokes that would make them both go quiet and smile when someone else was talking. I loved him. I truly did. He was, with me, affectionate and kind. But there was always this other channel of communication running parallel to our relationship, and I had no access to it. I started to rationalize less and observe more. The big moment, the one that truly hooked me into this mess, came about a week after the midnight text incident. We were having a cozy night in at my apartment. He was scrolling on his tablet, looking excited. "Come here, look at this," he said, his eyes bright. I sat next to him. On the screen was a beautifully drawn, intricate symbol. It was like two abstract shapes interlocking, twisting around each other in a complex pattern. "It's our twin sigil," he explained, voice full of pride. "My sister and I designed it years ago. We're finally going to do it. We're getting matching tattoos next week. A big one on the shoulder." He zoomed in on the design, showing me the details. I nodded, trying to look supportive. "Tattoos are personal, I get it." Then he looked at me, his expression open and loving. "And I was thinking, for you." He zoomed out and pointed to a smaller, simpler element of the design, a single curl that came off the main knot. "You could get this part. Just a small, simple version, right here on your wrist." He touched my wrist gently. "That way, you're part of it too. You're connected to us." My heart sank. It felt like a test, and one I was going to fail. This wasn't an invitation to join them, it was an instruction to brand myself as a subsidiary of their primary union. The twin sigil. Getting a permanent mark on my body, a simplified, reduced fraction of their symbol, to show I belong to them. The offer was made with such loving generosity that to reject it would seem cruel, ungrateful, like I was refusing his family. But to accept it felt like surrendering a piece of my own identity, agreeing to be a permanent third wheel in a bond one could never truly enter. I looked at his hopeful face, and I didn't know what to say. I just smiled, a weak, thin smile, and said, "It's a really interesting design. Let me think about it." He seemed a little disappointed, but kissed my forehead. "Okay, no pressure." But there was pressure. It was the pressure of their entire world, a world with its own language and rituals and now, its own permanent ink, and they were asking me to wear a piece of it, literally under my skin. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than ever. The question wasn't just about a tattoo. The question was, could I ever be enough, or would I always be just an annex to the house that the two of them had built together? The engagement ring on my finger felt suddenly very heavy, and for the first time, I wondered if I had agreed to marry not just him, but the silent, powerful shadow of his other half. The chapter of our early love felt closed, and I was now standing at the doorstep of a much more complicated story, holding a key that might not fit any of the locks. Wedding planning is supposed to be about compromise. I just didn't realize the only thing I wouldn't be allowed to compromise was my place as the number one woman in my own wedding. After the tattoo suggestion, I tried to push my unease down. I told myself I was being sensitive, that all families are weird, and that his closeness with his sister was a good thing. It showed he was capable of deep loyalty. I focused on the excitement of being engaged, of picking a date, of dreaming about our future. That bubble popped quickly and loudly. It started with what I thought would be a romantic dinner. My fiancé took me to a nice restaurant, soft music playing, candles on the table. He was beaming, holding my hand across the tablecloth. "I've made the best decision about the wedding party," he announced, his eyes shining. I smiled back, thinking he was going to ask my opinion on his college buddies. "My sister is going to be my best man, isn't that perfect?" He said it with such finality, such joy, as if he'd just revealed the most brilliant heartwarming plan in the history of matrimony. My fork, halfway to my mouth with a piece of salmon, just stopped. I slowly put it down. "Your best man," I repeated, my brain scrambling to catch up. "But she's a woman, and I thought your friend from college was going to do it." He waved a hand, dismissively. "That's so traditional. This is more us. She's my other half. Who else could stand up there with me? It's perfect." He wasn't asking. He was telling. And the way he said more us, it hit me. The us wasn't him and me. It was him and her. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This was the first big flag, planted right in the middle of my wedding vision. A few days later, I tried to gently bring it up again. We were at home, and I suggested nervously that maybe his friend could be the best man and his sister could be a groomswoman, a title that was still important but different. He looked at me with genuine hurt and confusion, like I'd suggested something cruel. "But she's my other half," he said again, as if that explained everything. "Who else would it be? This is important to me, to my family. Don't you want me to be happy?" I backed down immediately, afraid of being labeled the jealous, controlling fiancé who couldn't handle a close sibling bond. I swallowed my discomfort and agreed. It felt like a defeat. The next battle was over the dress. I went to a bridal salon with my mom and my best friend, looking forward to a fun girls' day. We'd been there an hour when the door chimed and in walked his sister, all smiles. "I hope you don't mind," she trilled, air-kissing my cheek. "I just had to come help. I have such a clear vision." My mom and friend exchanged a look but stayed polite. From that moment, the appointment wasn't mine anymore. She took over. She steered the consultant away from the sleek, modern dresses I was drawn to. Instead, she pulled out gowns with high necks, long sleeves, conservative lace. "These are so elegant," she'd say, holding them up. "So timeless. Perfect for our family." She kept saying our family. I felt myself shrinking. To be polite, I tried on a few of her pics. They were fine, but they weren't me. They felt like a costume. Finally, I gathered my courage and asked to try on a dress I had liked online, a fitted, off-the-shoulder style. When I walked out of the dressing room, my mom's eyes lit up. My friend whispered, "Yes, that's the one." I felt beautiful, like myself. I looked at his sister. Her smile had vanished. She looked at the dress, then at her brother, who had come by toward the end. Her face fell into an expression of sad concern. She leaned over to him and said, in a voice just loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's just so much her." I pictured something more. Timeless for our family. The way she said her, like it was a bad thing, like my individuality was a problem, cut deep. My fiancé looked at me, then at his sister, his face uncertain. "Well, it is her day," he said weakly. But the damage was done. The joy was sucked out of the room. I didn't buy the dress that day. The real blow came when we were planning the reception. We were sitting with a notebook, listing songs we wanted. I suggested our song, the one we'd danced to at a friend's wedding. He nodded, but then got a faraway look. "There's this one song we have to have," he said. It's non-negotiable." He pulled out his phone and played a slow, hauntingly romantic ballad. It was beautiful, in a sad kind of way. "It's the song my sister and I danced to at our grandparents' 50th anniversary," he explained, his voice soft. "It's our song. We have to have it. And we have to dance to it, just the two of us. It's a tribute to family." I stared at him. "You want to have a solo dance with your sister at our wedding reception?" I asked, my voice tight. "Yes," he said, like it was obvious. "It's important. It's tradition." That word again. Tradition. I finally found my spine. "I'm not comfortable with that," I said firmly. "The first dance is for us. The father-daughter dance, mother-son dance, those are for family. A dance with your sister in the middle of our reception. It sends a weird message." He sighed, a big, patient sigh, and took my hands. "Brian, I love how much you want me to yourself." "I do. But this is important to my family. This bond, it's what made me the man you love. Can't you be happy for it? Can't you support this?" And just like that, he flipped it. My legitimate discomfort about a deeply unusual wedding event became my insecurity, my failure to be supportive. The problem wasn't his bizarre request. The problem was my inability to appreciate his beautiful, special bond. I felt dizzy. I didn't agree, but I didn't fight anymore. I just went quiet. A few days after the dress-fitting disaster, I had to go back to the bridal salon to retrieve a shawl I'd left behind. As I was walking to the counter, I heard a familiar voice from around a corner, in the lobby seating area. It was his sister, on her phone. I paused, hidden by a rack of veils. Her voice was a low, urgent whisper. "She's trying to erase our traditions," she was saying. "She wants a wedding that's just about them. It's selfish. We have to be stronger. We can't budge on the altar kiss, no matter what. That's the line." My blood ran cold. The altar kiss? What was that? I stood there, frozen, listening to her plot against me, reducing my desire for a normal wedding to an attack on her world. She wasn't just a clingy sister, she was an active opponent. I slipped out of the store without getting my shawl. I needed to think. When I got home, my fiancé was excited. "Look," he said, showing me his laptop screen. It was a new seating chart. At the top, at the sweetheart table where just the bride and groom usually sit, he had placed 3 chairs. His name, my name, and his sister's name. "Since she's the best man and part of the core union, it makes sense for her to be at the table with us," he explained, so proud of his logic. I felt a scream building in my throat. The core union? I just nodded numbly and went to take a shower, feeling the walls of my own wedding close in around me. Later that night, he asked me to look on his laptop for some pictures of cufflinks he'd saved. He was in the shower. I opened his laptop and went to his downloads folder. There, among other files, was a folder labeled simply Wedding Traditions. My heart beat faster. I clicked it open, expecting to find links to articles about cake cutting or bouquet tosses. Instead, I found scanned pages, PDFs of what looked like handwritten notes in a flowing script. The titles were things like twin rites of passage, the bonding ceremonies, and incorporating the eternal link. My hands were shaking. I opened the last document. It was titled The Luckbringer's Kiss. I skimmed the text, my eyes catching phrases, "performed by the twin in arms upon the sealing of the union, bestows eternal fortune on the marriage, a sacred transfer of blessing from the original bond to the new." And at the bottom, underlined twice in dark ink, was a line that made my breath stop, "to be executed at the altar, following the exchange of vows, prior to the groom kissing the bride." I slammed the laptop shut just as I heard the bathroom door open. I sat there, my whole body cold. This wasn't just a weird family. This was a script. And I was apparently just a supporting character in their lifelong play. The wedding wasn't about celebrating our love, it was about enacting their rituals. The solo dance, the best man role, the seating chart, it was all leading to this. A kiss. Between my fiancé and his sister. At my wedding altar. Right before he was supposed to kiss me. The pieces snapped together with a terrible, final click. I had thought I was navigating quirks. Now I knew I was facing a doctrine. And as my fiancé walked back into the room, smiling and asking if I found the pictures, I realized the man I loved was its most devoted follower. The question was no longer if I could fit into their world. The question, staring me in the face from that darkened laptop screen, was much simpler. Did I even want to? And if not, what was I going to do about it? The engagement ring on my finger felt less like a promise and more like a shackle, and for the first time, I seriously considered the weight of the word no. They say tradition is just peer pressure from dead people. But the pressure coming from the very much alive people in my fiancé's family felt like a slowly tightening vice, and the mechanism was a single, grotesque kiss. I didn't confront him right away about what I found on his laptop. I needed to be sure. I waited a few days, letting the horror simmer, watching him. He acted completely normal, loving even. He asked me again about the simplified twin sigil tattoo. He talked about cake flavors. It was surreal, like we were planning two completely different weddings. Finally, I couldn't hold it in. We were having a quiet evening at home, and I just said it. I found the files on your laptop. The wedding traditions folder. The one about the luckbringer's kiss. I expected shock. I expected denial. I expected him to be embarrassed. What I got was pure, unadulterated excitement. His face lit up like I'd just told him we won the lottery. "You found them," he exclaimed, clapping his hands together. "I was going to surprise you with it closer to the date." "Yes, the best man's kiss. It's an old family tradition for luck and blessing. My sister will perform it. It's perfect, right? It ties everything together." He was beaming, waiting for me to share his joy. My stomach churned. "Perform it?" I repeated, my voice flat. "You mean kiss you? At our altar? Right after we say our vows?" "Yes," he said, as if explaining something simple to a child. "It's symbolic. It's her blessing on our union. It's beautiful." I just stared at him. There was no understanding in his eyes. No recognition of how deeply wrong, how profoundly inappropriate this was. To him, it was just another beautiful, special ritual. The glass wall between our realities wasn't just soundproof now, it was impenetrable. "I am not okay with that," I said, each word clear and hard. "That is not happening. Not at my wedding." His smile faltered. "Brian, don't be like this. It's important." The next day, I got a call from his mother. She invited me over for afternoon tea, just the two of us. I knew what this was. I went anyway, a part of me still hoping for reason. We sat in their pristine living room, delicate cups in our hands. She made small talk about the weather, the flowers for the wedding, and then she gently steered the conversation. "My son told me you're feeling unsure about some of our family's little ways," she began, her smile soft but firm. "Our family has unique bonds, Brian. Beautiful, old ways that might seem unusual to an outsider. But these traditions are the glue that holds us together. They're what make us strong." She reached over and patted my hand. "The kiss is a symbol of welcoming you into the fold. It's a gift. To reject it." She paused, her smile becoming fragile, a little sad. "Well, to reject it would be to reject the very foundation of what makes him him. You love him, don't you? All of him." The pressure was immense. It was emotional blackmail served on fine china. They were framing my boundaries as an attack on their son's soul. I left that house feeling dizzy and defeated. That night, I gave my fiancé a true ultimatum. I was calm, but I was firm. "It's me or the kiss," I told him. "A normal best man speech, or she is not in the role. You choose." For the first time since I'd known him, I saw a flicker of something other than love or hurt in his eyes. It was a coldness, a flash of steel. It was gone in an instant, replaced by a wounded expression, but I had seen it. He didn't give me an answer. He just walked out of the room. 2 days later, he asked me to come over to his place. He said we needed to talk, to work this out. When I arrived, they were waiting for me. He and his sister. They sat side by side on the couch, a united front. I was directed to the chair opposite them. It felt like an interview. Or an interrogation. They launched into a coordinated speech. They told me I was forcing him to choose between the love of his life and the soul of his life. They said I was insecure, that my jealousy was clouding my judgment. They said I was being controlling, trying to dim a light I simply could not comprehend. The sister's voice was dripping with fake sympathy. "I just want my brother to be happy," she said, her eyes actually glistening with manufactured tears. "Don't you, Brian?" They tag-teamed me, one speaking, then the other, reinforcing each other's points. It was a psychological siege. I felt small and crazy, like maybe they were right. Maybe I was the problem for not understanding their beautiful, special bond. I left that meeting shattered. I cried in my car for a long time. But then, a weird thing happened. The tears dried up, and a cold, clear anger took their place. I was tired of feeling crazy. I needed to know, for sure, what I was dealing with. Was I really just an insecure fiancé, or was there something more calculated going on? I needed proof, something I couldn't rationalize away. That's when I made a decision that felt both desperate and necessary. I went to an electronics store and bought a small, simple voice-activated audio recorder. The next time I was at my fiancé's place, I found a moment alone in his study, the room he and his sister often retreated to for their private talks. I hid the recorder behind a row of books on a high shelf, pointed toward the couch. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I would hear nothing but boring chat about family gossip or wedding logistics, and then I would feel so guilty for spying that I would finally find a way to accept all of this. I left it there for a week, my anxiety growing with each passing day. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I went over early one morning, saying I'd left a book there. He was still asleep. I retrieved the recorder, my hands trembling. I drove home, locked my door, and plugged the small device into my computer. There were hours of audio. Long stretches of nothing, or the muffled sound of the TV. I fast-forwarded, my heart pounding. I heard them come into the room one evening. I heard the casual chatter, about their mom, about work. My finger hovered over the delete button, shame washing over me. Then I heard my name. My own name, spoken by my fiancé. I froze. And then I listened. He was imitating me. He was repeating my tearful ultimatum from the other night, but in a high-pitched, whiny, mocking tone. "It's me or the kiss," he squealed, and then I heard his sister's laughter, a bright tinkling sound that now sounded cruel. "She's so dramatic," the sister said, her voice full of contempt. "She doesn't get it. She'll never get it." There was a pause, and then her voice dropped to a low, clear whisper. I had to turn the volume up to hear it. "Just wait. After the wedding, it won't matter. She'll have to accept us. She'll have signed the contract, literally. We'll always come first. She'll just be the wife. We're the bond." Then I heard my fiancé's voice, no longer mocking, but calm and agreeing. "Yeah, she'll learn. Or she'll be miserable. But she won't leave." The recording ended shortly after. I sat at my desk, completely still. The world had narrowed to the sound of that whisper coming through my computer speakers. Asterisk will always come first. She'll just be the wife. Asterisk it wasn't in my head. It wasn't insecurity. It was a plan. A cold, calculated strategy to use the wedding as a trap, to make me a permanent junior partner in their twisted partnership. The love I felt for him didn't vanish in that moment. It curdled. It turned into something else, something sharp and focused. The sadness was burned away by the pure, clean flame of fury. I saved the audio file. I made 3 backup copies, one on a USB drive I hid, one in a secure online folder, and one email to myself. I looked at my wedding planning notebook, with its lists of colors and caterers. I picked up a pen. With a hand that was perfectly steady, I crossed out the item at the top that said, "Finalize vows." On a fresh page, I started a new list. A secret one. The first item I wrote was, "Research wireless microphones. High quality. Long range." The game had changed. I was no longer trying to win a place in their family. I was now gathering evidence. The wedding was still on, but my reason for walking down the aisle had just undergone a radical and terrifying shift. I wasn't going to be a bride. I was going to be a witness. and I was going to make sure that when the truth came out, everyone else would hear it too. The question of whether I should marry him was now answered with a resounding, silent no. The new question, the one that kept me up that night, was much more practical. How exactly was I going to bring their perfect, secret world crashing down around them? They expected me to make a scene. They were prepared for tears, for a jealous outburst they could shush and pity. So I gave them nothing. I became a blank page, and they were too busy signing their names in cruelty to notice I was about to be published. In the days leading up to the rehearsal dinner, I was a model of calm cooperation. I stopped arguing about the solo dance. I stopped questioning the seating chart with the three of us at the sweetheart table. When my fiancé tentatively brought up the luck-bringer's kiss again, I just smiled a small, tight smile and said, "If it means that much to your family, we'll figure it out." He looked so relieved, so victorious. He pulled me into a hug. "I knew you'd come around," he whispered into my hair. I let him hug me, my face over his shoulder, my eyes open and dry. I had my own project. The wireless microphone arrived, a sleek, professional-looking thing. I practiced with it, learning how to pair it discreetly with my phone's recording app. The plan was simple. The rehearsal dinner was at a nice restaurant with a private room. I arrived early, offering to help the coordinator. In the chaos of setting up, I slipped the small, wireless microphone into the centerpiece of the main table, right where the toasts would be given. It looked like a decorative part of the floral arrangement. I paired it with my phone, did a quick sound check, and saw the levels jump when someone clinked a glass nearby. Perfect. My phone, set to record, was in my clutch purse, which I would keep on the table all night. The stage was set. The dinner started normally enough. Everyone was there, all the smiling faces that had applauded their twin stories. I smiled back. I made small talk. I was pleasant, a little quiet, which they probably mistook for resigned acceptance. Then came the toasts. His father gave a warm, generic one. My best friend gave a short, sweet speech about how happy I looked. Then his sister stood up. She tapped her glass with a spoon, drawing all eyes to her. She was wearing a dress that was just a shade too close to white, but I let it go. She launched into her speech. It began sweetly, talking about her brother, his kindness. Then it shifted. She talked about their childhood, their secrets, their unbreakable bond. Her voice grew more emotional, wavering. "He was my first love," she proclaimed, a single tear tracing down her cheek. The family members nodded, some dabbing their own eyes. My fiancé looked up at her, his expression one of pure devotion. Then she turned her gaze directly to me. "And I'm so happy to finally be getting a sister," she said, her voice thick with false sincerity. "But please," she continued, her tone turning pleading, "never ask me to not be his first girl." The room let out a collective, mushy awe. My fiancé's mother caught my eye from across the table and gave me a warm, encouraging nod, as if to say, *C? Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this family wonderful? I just nodded back, my face a polite mask. Inside, the recorder in my purse was capturing every word. Then, as she sat down to more applause, she looked at her brother and then at the crowd. "You know," she said, raising her voice slightly, "since some of you haven't seen it, and since Brian is now fully on board, maybe we should demonstrate the beautiful tradition that will bless their union tomorrow." My blood went cold, but I didn't move. I just watched. My fiancé looked at me, a question in his eyes. I gave him the slightest nod, the barest movement of my chin. He took it as full permission. He stood up. His sister stood up and walked over to him. They faced each other in the middle of the room, the family forming a circle around them. No one looked uncomfortable. No one looked shocked. They all looked eager, expectant. "This is the luck-bringer's kiss," his sister announced to the room, as if introducing a performance. Then she turned to him. She didn't give him a peck on the cheek. She didn't give him a quick, sisterly smack on the lips. She took his face in both of her hands, her fingers sliding into his hair. She looked deeply into his eyes for a long moment. And then she kissed him. It was a long, slow, unmistakably intimate kiss. The kind of kiss you give a lover, not a sibling. It lasted a full 3 seconds. The room erupted. There were whoops, Cheers, loud applause. People were laughing with delight. My fiancé's eyes were closed during the kiss, a passive, accepting smile on his face. As they finally pulled apart, the cheers ringing in my ears, his sister looked over his shoulder. Her eyes found mine. In that split second, with the crowd still clapping, all the fake sweetness, the false tears, the sympathetic act, dropped away. Her gaze held a pure, possessive gleam of absolute victory. She had won. She had paraded her claim in front of everyone, and they had celebrated it. And I, the bride, had sat there and taken it. She had broken me, and she wanted me to know it. I met her gaze. I didn't look away. I let her see my eyes, but I kept my face utterly still. I didn't give her the anger she wanted. I didn't give her the tears. I just looked back. And in that moment, I think she saw something else, something she didn't expect, because her triumphant gleam flickered, just for an instant, with a hint of confusion. That's when I felt it. A lifetime of being polite, of making nice, of smoothing things over, of compromising my own feelings to keep the peace, it all shattered inside me. It broke into a million sharp, clear pieces. And from those pieces, a terrifying calm rose up. It filled me, cool and steady. I carefully set my champagne flute down on the table. The soft clink it made sounded, to me, like a gavel falling. A decision made. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not run from the room. I simply sat there, watching the aftermath, memorizing every face. I saw his uncle slapping my fiancé on the back. I saw his mother weeping happy tears. I saw his father beaming with pride. Every single person in that room, except for my best friend who looked pale and horrified, was complicit. They were all part of this. The recording in my purse had gotten it all. The sister's speech, the cheering, the slick sound of that kiss, the roaring approval. It was all evidence now. A little while later, as people were having dessert and coffee, I stood up. I walked out of the private room, through the restaurant, and out the front door into the cool night air. I heard footsteps behind me. It was my fiancé. He looked confused, concerned. "Hey, are you upset?" he asked, reaching for my arm. I turned to face him. I made sure my expression was serene, almost peaceful. I smiled the most genuine smile I had managed all night. "Not at all," I said, my voice even and soft. "I just finally understand everything. I get it now. Completely." He blinked, his confusion deepening. "You do? So, we're good? For tomorrow?" I nodded. "For tomorrow. See you at the altar." I leaned in and gave him a quick, dry kiss on the cheek. Then I turned and walked to my car. He stood there on the sidewalk, watching me go, probably thinking I had finally fully surrendered. That I had accepted my place. He had no idea. I didn't drive home. I drove across town to a 24-hour print and copy shop. I walked in, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I took the USB drive from my pocket, the one with the original audio file from his study and the new fresh recording from tonight. I handed it to the clerk, a bored-looking young man. "I need 2 copies of everything on this drive, on separate USBs please," I said. My voice was calm. While the machines whirred, copying the proof of my betrayal, I pulled out my phone. I opened the audio app and carefully edited the 2 recordings together. I trimmed it, making it tight. I put the cruel, mocking whispers from his study right after the roaring cheers for the kiss. The contrast was chilling. It told the whole story by itself. I saved this new, combined file. I sent it to the same secure online folder. By the time I got home, with the 2 new physical copies of the evidence in my hand, all emotion was gone. I was a machine with a single purpose. The wedding was in less than 12 hours. I was still going to walk down the aisle. I was still going to wear the dress. But I wasn't going to say, "I do." I was going to do something else entirely. I laid out my dress, my shoes, my veil. Everything was perfect. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone I didn't fully recognize, but I trusted her. She was done being quiet. She was done being polite. The rehearsal dinner had been their unveiling. Tomorrow, at the altar, would be mine. The question of whether I had the courage to go through with it was gone. The only question left was a technical one. Would the church's sound system be powerful enough for everyone to hear the truth, loud and clear? I wore the dress. I walked the aisle. I even had something old, new, borrowed, and blue. But the tradition I was there to uphold was one of my own making, the scorched earth policy for gaslighters. The morning of the wedding was surreal. My best friend helped me get ready at my apartment. She knew something was up. "You're too calm," she said, zipping up my gown. It wasn't the off-the-shoulder one I loved. It was a simpler dress I'd bought last minute, elegant but forgettable. A costume for the role I was about to play. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, her eyes worried. "There are other ways to leave." I looked at her in the mirror. "This is the only way they'll ever understand," I said, my voice steady. "They need an audience." In my small bouquet of white roses, I had hidden a wireless microphone, a different one, smaller than the one from the rehearsal dinner. It was paired to my phone, which was connected to a small transmitter in my garter. The church's sound system was basic, but I'd arrived early under the guise of checking floral placements and had a brief, technical chat with the sound guy. I'd slipped him $100 to let me handle the audio for a special surprise segment and showed him how to plug my transmitter into the main system. He was young and didn't care, as long as he got paid. Everything was set. I arrived at the church alone. I sent my parents in ahead of me. My father had been confused, hurt that I didn't want him to walk me. "It's something I need to do for myself, Dad," I told him, and he'd reluctantly agreed. I think he knew deep down that this was no ordinary wedding. I stood at the back of the church, behind the closed doors. I could hear the organ music playing, the low murmur of the guests. My heart wasn't pounding with nerves. It was beating a slow, determined rhythm. This was it. The doors opened. Every head turned. I saw the sea of faces, the smiles that slowly faded into confusion as they saw I was alone. I saw the floral arches, the candles, the altar at the far end. And there he was, my fiancé. He looked handsome in his tuxedo. He also looked confused, his eyes searching behind me for my father. Standing right beside him, dressed in a tailored white tuxedo that looked far too bridal, was his sister. Her expression shifted from concern to a smug, secretive satisfaction. She leaned over and whispered something in his ear, and he gave a small, tense smile. That was the final fuel I needed. I began to walk. Slowly, steadily, my heels clicking on the stone floor. The only sound was the organ and my footsteps. I didn't look at the guests. I kept my eyes forward, on the altar, on the two of them standing together. It felt like walking toward the enemy camp. The officiant, an elderly family friend, looked utterly flustered. He clearly had no script for this. I reached the altar and turned to face the crowd. I took my place slightly apart from my fiancé and his sister. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to regain control of a situation that had already slipped away. He proceeded with the traditional question, his voice shaky. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" My father, seated in the front row, began to stand, his face a mask of pain and confusion. Before he could speak, I lifted my bouquet slightly toward my mouth and spoke, my voice calm and clear, amplified through the church's speakers, echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "I believe a more relevant question is," I said, my tone cool and measured, "who gives this man to be married?" The effect was instant. A ripple of shock went through the congregation. My fiancé's head snapped toward me. His sister's smug smile vanished, replaced by startled anger. The officiant just gaped. I looked directly at my fiancé. "I have a gift for you," I said into the bouquet, my voice still echoing. "A wedding gift. Since you love traditions so much, I thought I'd share one of mine. It's called the truth." I tapped the screen of my phone, which was tucked discreetly within my bouquet. I had queued up the edited audio file. For a second, there was nothing but the sound of rustling fabric and shocked breathing in the church. Then the speakers came to life. First, the sound of a crowded room, glasses clinking. Then his sister's voice, dripping with false emotion, filled the sacred space. Asterisk, he was my first love. Please, never ask me to not be his first girl. Asterisk, the guests shifted, uneasy. Then came the sound of the cheering, the whoops and applause from the rehearsal dinner. And then, unmistakable, the wet, slick sound of that long, intimate kiss. A collective gasp went up from the pews. I saw his mother's hand fly to her mouth. His father's face went slack with horror. Then, before the noise from the recording could fade, it crossfaded into the next clip. The quality changed, became more close, more private. It was the audio from his study. First, my fiancé's voice, a high-pitched, cruel mockery of my own. Asterisk, it's me or the kiss. Asterisk, followed by his sister's bright, laughing cruelty. Then her voice, low and clear and venomous, the words that had kept me awake. Asterisk, after the wedding, it won't matter. She'll have to accept us. We'll always come first. She'll just be the wife. We're the bond. Asterisk, and finally, my fiancé's voice, calm and agreeing. Asterisk, yeah. She'll learn. Or she'll be miserable. But she won't leave. Asterisk, I let the last word hang in the air. Then I stopped the playback. The church was absolutely still. You could have heard a pin drop. The faces in the pews were a panorama of shock, disgust, and dawning comprehension. The united front of their family was shattered right there in front of everyone. I didn't look at my fiancé. I kept my eyes on his family, on his parents, on the aunts and uncles who had always smiled at their antics. I wanted them to sit in it. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had enabled. My fiancé finally found his voice. It was a broken, strangled sound. Brian, that was private, you. He couldn't even form a sentence. His sister was white with rage, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She took a step toward me, but my fiancé, in a daze, put a hand out to stop her. The movement, him protecting her even now, in this moment, was more telling than any recording. I finally turned to look at him. I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a vast, empty clarity. You were right, I said, my voice still amplified for everyone to hear. I didn't understand your language. I finally realized I never wanted to. I then looked at the officiant, who was staring at me like I was a ghost. I don't think you need to continue, I said softly to him. He just nodded, mute. I turned back to face the crowd. I didn't have a speech. They had heard all they needed to hear. I simply let go of my bouquet. It fell to the stone floor at my feet with a soft thud. I didn't look at it. I turned on my heel and began to walk back down the aisle, the same way I had come. I didn't run. I walked with my head high, my back straight, in my wedding dress. I heard the chaos begin to erupt behind me. A single sob, then voices rising in anger and confusion, chairs scraping. I didn't look back. I pushed open the heavy church doors and stepped into the bright sunlight. A car was waiting at the curb, as I had arranged. My best friend was at the wheel, her eyes wide. I got in. Go, I said. She peeled away from the curb. As we drove, I could see through the church's open doors the shape of the crowd milling in chaos. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. I felt exhausted, hollowed out, but clean. It was over. The wedding was over. The lie was over. After a few minutes, my friend asked, "Where to?" "Your place." I opened my eyes. I looked out the window at the city passing by. The legal office I had looked up was downtown, not far from here. I had done the emotional demolition. Now it was time for the practical cleanup. I had to be smart. I had to protect myself. "No," I said, my voice tired but firm. "Take me to the law offices of Henderson and Qley." She glanced at me, surprised, but didn't argue. She just nodded and changed lanes. The church, the altar, the shocked faces, they were already fading, becoming a story I had survived. The next part, the part with consequences and paperwork and the cold reality of undoing a life I had almost built, that was about to begin. I had just publicly destroyed my wedding. Now I needed a lawyer to help me handle the fallout. And to make sure that when the dust settled, I wasn't the one left paying for the ruins. They thought the worst that could happen was a cancelled wedding. They never considered that the quiet, accommodating guy they pushed around had studied the rulebook and was now prepared to play a much dirtier and much more legal game. The law office of Henderson and Qley was all dark wood and crisp white paper. I sat across from Ms. Henderson, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who listened without a flicker of surprise as I laid it out. I played her the audio clips. I showed her the wedding contracts, all the deposits I had paid for with my own savings, the venue, the caterer, the band, the photographer. I explained the whole twisted story. She didn't call me dramatic. She didn't tell me to move on. She just nodded, took notes, and said, "We can sue for the return of your financial outlay. We'll name your former fiancé as the primary defendant for breach of the implied agreement to marry in good faith. And we'll name his sister as a co-defendant for intentional interference with contractual relations. She actively worked to destroy the partnership, and we have the evidence." Hearing it put in those cold, legal terms was more satisfying than any scream I could have let out in that church. A week after the altar ambush, they were both served. Not with a heartfelt letter, not with an angry text, but with a formal legal summons. A process server handed them papers that outlined, in dry legalese, how they were being taken to court for my money. It wasn't about love lost. It was about a debt owed. The social fallout happened faster than any court date. I didn't post a long, emotional story online. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was looking for accountability. I created a simple, clean graphic. It had no photos, just text on a plain background. It read, "Some traditions are meant to be broken." Below it was a link. The link led to a 2-minute audio clip. I had edited it down even further, just the 30 most damning seconds from his study, his sister's icy, will always come first whisper, followed immediately by the 30 seconds of the rehearsal dinner cheers and that unmistakable kiss. I shared it. I tagged no one. But I sent it directly, in private messages, to every single mutual friend, to every family member on his side that I had an email for, and to my own family and friends with a short note, "This is why the wedding is off. I'm okay." Then I let it go. I didn't check comments. I didn't engage in arguments. It was a stone dropped in a pond, and the ripples were immediate and vicious. My phone blew up, but I let it go to voicemail. Some messages were supportive, horrified. Others were angry, calling me a vengeful hacker, saying I'd taken private moments public. That was fine. Let them fight about it. Let their perfect, unified family crack into pieces arguing over right and wrong. The audio was the truth, and truth doesn't need defending. It just sits there, undeniable. My former fiancé tried to call me, of course. He left pleading voicemails, his voice thick with tears and confusion. "Brian, please, we can talk about this like adults. You can't just sue me. We can work this out. I love you." I listened to them once, then deleted them. I sent a single text back. "All communication can go through my attorney. The time for talking was before you let another person kiss you at our altar." Then I blocked his number. The next phase was the pre-trial conference. We met in a sterile meeting room at the courthouse. Ms. Henderson was with me. My ex-fiancé was there with his sister and a flustered-looking lawyer they'd hired. He looked smaller, deflated. The sister, however, was a coiled spring of rage. She glared at me across the table. When the judge, a no-nonsense older woman, entered and called the case, the air felt tense. Their lawyer tried to speak first, arguing that this was a personal matter, not a legal one, and that the suit was frivolous and vengeful. Ms. Henderson stood up. She was calm and professional. "Your Honor, the plaintiff entered into multiple binding contracts for services based on the promise of marriage. The defendants, through a pattern of intentional and malicious behavior designed to sabotage the relationship, directly caused the breach of those contracts, resulting in significant financial loss for my client. This is not about hurt feelings. It is about monetary damages." The judge looked at their side. "Do you dispute the core facts here?" she asked. The sister couldn't help herself. She burst out, "He recorded us without our knowledge. That's illegal. It's a betrayal of privacy." The judge fixed her with a cool look. "This is a civil matter regarding contracts. The method of evidence gathering may be a separate issue, but not the primary one before me." Then Ms. Henderson did something brilliant. She didn't even wait. She placed a printed transcript of the audio on the table and slid a copy to the judge and one to their lawyer. "Will your clients," she asked, her voice clear, be disputing the authenticity of these recordings under oath? She looked directly at my ex-fiancé and his sister. Because if they are prepared to swear in this courtroom that they did not say these words, then we can proceed on that basis. The room got very quiet. I watched them. My ex-fiancé looked down at the table, his face pale. He couldn't meet my eyes. His sister opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at her lawyer, who was rapidly scanning the transcript, his frown deepening. He knew. They couldn't deny it. To lie under oath would be perjury, a criminal charge far worse than a small claims lawsuit. The evidence was too clear, too specific. The judge saw their hesitation. I strongly suggest both parties attempt to settle this before trial, she said. The court's time is valuable. You have 30 days. We left the room first. I didn't look back. A week later, a settlement offer arrived. It was for 80% of the total deposits I'd lost. Ms. Henderson wanted to push for 100%, plus legal fees. I thought about it. The money wasn't really the point anymore. I had what I wanted, a formal legal recognition that they were in the wrong. A paper trail that said their actions had consequences. I told her to take the deal. I just wanted it over. The money arrived in my account via a direct wire transfer. There was no note, no apology, just a transaction. That felt fitting. It was the final severance. The financial tie was cut, just like the emotional one had been in that church. In the end, the lawsuit wasn't about getting rich. It was about getting a receipt. I needed a judge, a lawyer, a legal document, something from the real, objective world, to look at their bizarre, insular fantasy and stamp it with one simple word, wrong. And it worked. I heard through the grapevine, from a mutual friend who finally saw the light, that the family was in shambles. Some relatives sided with me, horrified by what they'd heard. Others doubled down, calling me a monster. My ex-fiancé and his sister were reportedly isolated, wrapped up in their own bitter little world, their bond now tainted by public scandal and legal loss. They had each other, just like they always wanted. I hoped they enjoyed it. I moved apartments. I took some time off work. I started seeing a therapist, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to make sure I never again confused manipulation for love or tradition for control. One afternoon, months later, I was cleaning out a box of old things. I found a saved voicemail from my ex-fiancé's mother, sent the day after the wedding. I hadn't deleted it. I played it. Her voice was trembling, not with anger, but with something like shame. "Brian," the message said. We heard the recording. All of it. I didn't know. I didn't know they talked like that in private. I thought it was just closeness. "I am so sorry for my part in this. You didn't deserve any of it." I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Her apology was for her, not for me. I didn't need it. The closure I had crafted for myself was far more complete. I had my money back. I had my freedom. I had my truth publicly affirmed. The story was over. Or at least, that chapter was. I was sitting in my new, sunlit living room, the past finally feeling like it was truly behind me, when my phone buzzed. It was an email notification. The subject line read, "You're not the first." My heart gave a small, curious jump. I opened it. The message was brief, from an email address I didn't recognize. "I saw what you did. I was engaged to him before you. It was the same with me, but I didn't have the guts to do what you did. I just ran. There might be others. If you're ever willing to talk, I'd like to. I think we have a lot in common." I stared at the screen, the sunlight feeling suddenly very bright. I had built my own justice, brick by painful brick, and I had thought the structure was finished. But this email was a door I hadn't seen, leading to a wing of the story I never knew existed. I wasn't an anomaly. I was a pattern. I read the message again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a new kind of curiosity, clean and sharp, without any of the old pain attached. The question wasn't about him anymore. The question was about how many others had been silenced by their secret language, and whether my story could finally give them a voice, too. I closed the email, but I didn't delete it. I just sat there thinking, as the sun moved across the floor of my quiet, peaceful, and entirely my own apartment.